Raghunath, are you ready for this?
What?
The wisdom of the sages trainings that are going on.
Where?
At the Eco Village, the Govardhan Eco Village in India.
Why?
To totally transform your life spiritually.
Who?
You, me, Raghunath Swami's going to be there. Other great teachers are going to be there. Lots of cool people.
How?
You go to wisdomofthesages.com/events. You find all the information there.
Haribo.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Alachua, Florida, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kastuba Das. Welcome to the show, everyone. Welcome to Florida. Florida. It was always like, when we were growing up, Florida was always like, Florida. It's like, because there was Disneyland here, there was Epcot. It was always like, there was fruit growing on trees, oranges growing on trees. It was always a mystery fantasy land. Did your parents ever take you to Florida?
Never. No, we didn't go anywhere.
Mara, did you ever go to Florida when you were a kid?
I think I went once when I was a kid.
Once when
but
you
I
were a
didn't
kid.
get to go to Disney World or Disneyland or any of that stuff.
You're kidding. They just dragged you to Central Florida?
Nah, we went to the beach.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Yeah, it was great.
Danya? Where's Danya? She's one of our. Is she here today?
I'm here. Yeah.
Oh, hi, Danya. Were you ever dragged to Florida as a kid?
Yeah, to live. That's where I live now. I was dragged forcibly. No, just kidding.
She was dragged there to live. Okay, it's a whole different thing. We're moving to Florida to live. Anyway, I never got dragged here. I was dreamed of it. But now I'm here with my kids, and it's a great Kirtan festival going on. Festival of the Holy Name. That's what it's called, right, Danya?
Mm-hmm. Festival of the Holy Name.
And it goes on this entire week, and I met so many devotees that I haven't seen in years. So many others who listen to the pod. People are just coming up to me like I was Elvis Presley yesterday, going, "Oh my God, I listened to this podcast." It was so kind.
Like us, Elvis Presley.
Maybe it's because what I was wearing.
Oh, you were
I was dressed like Elvis. I had fringes hanging from my sleeves. No, it's just a very, very sweet devotees and old friends, new friends. You want to hear something really crazy? I met a girl named Humungi.
Okay.
Humungi. She's like, I listen to the show all the time. I was like, oh, great. She's like, and then she goes, I was a student of Kelly Skinner's, who's on our show.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, oh, great. Small world. She goes, no, it's a smaller world. She goes, my mother was best friends with your sister growing up in Connecticut. I was like, oh, that's crazy. I was like, what's her name? And she said her name. And I was like, oh, yeah, I know her. She grew up in when your friend, your sibling has a best friend, they're always at the house. I was like, this is crazy. She goes, yeah. And when I was getting into it, mother's a little freaked out. But I said, well, Janet's brother's into it. And it sort of, it helped calm her mom down a little bit. It helped.
You sure that helped?
I think it helped.
Okay.
It helped.
Amazing.
Is that weird?
Krishna miracles.
That was a Krishna miracle for sure. For sure. A lot of miracles happening here in Bhakti. We're miraculous divine beings, and we forget and we go around living a mundane life, and it cheats us out of the magic that is our spiritual life. Spiritual life is here. You just got to claim it. What do you think about that, Danya?
I concur.
Okay. All right. Okay. And I saw Danya yesterday and her husband and her babies and her sisters. Oh, it was a beautiful day. So it's Q&A day, people. If you're listening to this on Facebook, we study the Srimad Bhagavatam every day, but on Saturday, we do questions and answers day. And Sunday, we usually have a guest. Tomorrow, I'm driving back to New York. And so there is no show tomorrow, a show at 8 a.m. on Monday.
Back on Monday. Okay.
Back on Monday. So if you're listening on Facebook and you want to join us live, you can do that. This is Mara over here in the corner. She will give you the secret codes. You just have to email her, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And she'll put down her knitting needles, read the email, and then she'll send you the secret codes to enter our secret society called the Zoom group, the Zoomers. All right, so let's keep this going with any announcements before we dive into the.
Yeah, we have Bhakti recovery group meetings today at 9:30 and 12:30. And then tomorrow there's a hybrid in-person and online meeting at the Bhakti Center if people want to attend an in-person Bhakti recovery group meeting.
Both online too, though.
Yeah, it's online and also in person.
It's hybrid, Kostuma.
Hybrid. It's
hybrid.
I'm clarifying.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for your clarification.
Yeah.
Oh, and then Monday night will be the astrology thing.
Yeah,
too, right?
part 3 of Radhikesh's Intro to Vedic Astrology, which has been super interesting.
Okay.
It's Monday at 6 p.m.
Now we have questions, right? And we have questions today that several questions that Raghunath and I just said, we can't handle this. We got to bring Dunya in, right?
Yeah. You want to introduce Dunya?
Yeah. Dunya holds a master's degree in counselor education and holds a specialist degree in couples and family therapy. Her approach focuses on creative and spiritual wellness. She aims to help individuals and relationships thrive with deep spiritual principles at the core of the therapeutic experience. In addition to the traditional modalities, Dunya is passionate about developing therapeutic tools that incorporate Bhakti principles and practices as means of reconnecting with our essential nature. So you're exactly the person we need for this, Dunya. Thank you for coming back.
I need one of your therapeutic tools. Can you help me?
Spend a little extra time down there. We were just saying before the show, if we could just get Dunya to spend about a month or two with me,
with a team of other therapists.
And, she could bring
surrounding me 24/7,
just analyzing Raghunath. How do we understand his statements and how he goes back and forth? And we need like some thorough analysis.
Is there a name for his psychological condition?
But thank you for joining us.
Cocktail of drugs.
People always really appreciate it when you come on the show and share. And again, like some of these questions, it's like we appreciate questions, Bhakti related questions, but sometimes it goes into realms where we really feel like someone with more experience, like you have as a counselor,
she's great.
It is really helpful. So
she's our version of phone a friend.
Phone a friend.
Phone a friend here.
Yeah. Okay, so are you ready? Now we have 2 questions are very similar. So what we thought is we'd read both questions and then you can take it from there, Dunya, all right?
Sure, yeah.
So the first one is from Eva, and the second one is from Bailey. So first, Eva's question. She writes, this is really cool. My sister and I introduced Bhakti to my father, and he is really enjoying the wisdom and it's helping him in many ways. That's really cool, right? It's not too often that kids can pull that off with parents, right?
Oh, it's amazing.
He is a recovering alcoholic and is not drinking and has realized how much his own addiction has caused so much pain and suffering in our family. Okay. So my sister and I have forgiven him, but he continues to question how to forgive himself. Interesting, right? He can intellectualize the Gita and understand its message, but to deeply feel Krishna's love and feel worthy of his love is very difficult for him to do. He asks, how can I forgive and love myself after what I have done? What does Krishna say about forgiveness? How can he love others if he cannot love and forgive himself? Any guidance on this would be so helpful. Okay, so that's the first question from Eva. Now, the second question is in a similar vein, coming from Bailey. And Bailey writes, from a Bhakti perspective, what do you do when you've genuinely done wrong to someone you love and seriously hurt them? How do you approach the guilt, shame, and regret? Okay, those are tough questions. So, Dunya, what are your thoughts on these?
Yeah, so I appreciate so much the story, especially the one that Eva shared of being able to share Bhakti as a family, because a lot of times what we find is underneath the behaviors that we do that harm other people, whatever those might be, emotional harm, or sometimes even, forms of abuse, what underlies that is pain, right? And so
Your own pain.
your own pain, right? That's why you enact these problematic behaviors, and then you end up kind of contaminating others with your pain. That's essentially what all forms of harm or abuse are. It means I have pain inside, and then that bleeds through into my behavior, and then that behavior affects other people and perpetuates the pain. So if you kind of scale that back to its root, at the core of it, what it is a spiritual issue, because inherently, we learn from the Gita that there's the three modes of material nature that are constantly interacting and combining. Those are kind of always fluctuating. And so there's always the potential for our problematic behaviors to come out as a reaction to those modes of nature, right?
Yeah.
So ideally, the stability that we have and the ability to behave according to higher principles, it comes from a spiritual place, right? Because it's coming from a place of our values. For example, choosing to not drink anymore. Essentially, it's a spiritual choice, right? Because
I
you're
want to be a better person.
I want to be a better person. I want to even the spiritual principle of wanting to take care of my body, because I understand that my body is supposed to be a vessel for good, or it's supposed to be a vessel for a higher purpose. Even basic health principles have their root in spirituality as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of that, it's important to understand that pain comes from pain, and that can even find itself kind of generationally. Like they see that alcoholism or other forms of addiction, they come from generations of pain that are then passed down as a kind of coping mechanism. So having that, and it sounds like this person, especially in the first account, kind of is already there, but then it's dealing with, wow, I'm now realizing the pain that I've caused. And I have so much remorse. I don't really know how to come back from that. And I don't really know how to practice bhakti with this heavy load of regret and, shame, was used in there. So it's important. There's a really great writer and educator. Her name is Brene Brown. I think I've brought her up on the show before.
So, yeah.
She makes a distinction between guilt and shame.
Okay.
So she studies vulnerability and shame as kind of her main topics of exploration. And she says that guilt is appropriate because it means I did something wrong and I know it. And shame means there's something wrong with me. I'm bad. It's like an identity thing. And so guilt, you can work with that and say, you know what I did was off the mark, right? It's like the original definition of sin, which is like, I'm missing the mark. I'm not on point with my values. I'm not behaving as I intend to behave. Shame is a little less helpful because there's a lot of stuckness there. It's like a glue that once you start kind of getting into shame, it doesn't necessarily propel you forward into changed behavior. And so that's important, kind of in the sense of, okay, what do I do with this practically then? There's another super great writer. You can find her stuff online. Her name is Mia Mingus. And she does kind of a workshop on how to apologize or how to make amends. And so she has these like 4 parts to how to approach these situations where you know that you've done something that's wrong or that's hurtful and you're trying to make it right. And so she says that the first piece of that is self-reflection. And it sounds like, these people are there. I'm noticing that things are not as they should be. Something has gone wrong. I've hurt somebody, someone's behavior has changed toward me, or I'm reflecting on my past and realizing, wow, okay, my journey has led me a certain way and I need things to be different. And then the second piece is actually apologizing. It's vocalizing, what I've done was not okay, or I see things differently now, or I need to, so it's really putting words to the realizations you're having as a result of self-reflection. And then the third part is repair or making amends. And I know that in the 12-step groups, this is also an important step, which is to make amends, to repair, to see if the relationship can hold connection, and making that connection as comfortable as possible to the party that you're making amends with, right? So it's not, I want to repair it so I feel better. It's, I want to repair so that the hurt party feels better. What do you need to repair? What do you need? So in the case of this father and his daughters, it would be a really healthy, beautiful conversation to say, what do you feel like would have made it right then? What would make it right now? How can I show you that I truly am sorry for what happened before, and that I want our relationship to be different. These are powerful questions, because what you're demonstrating is, at whatever time my pain or the pain that I enacted might have disempowered you, but now I want to reestablish or recognize again your power in the relationship, and I want to make it right. And then the last piece is behavior change. So are you really different than before? Right? Because it's all well and good to express remorse and to say, that was so tough, or I'm so sorry I did that, or, this is my fault, or whatever, or I've understood this was coming from a place of my own trauma. And sometimes that's the end of where people's self-reflection goes, like, oh, well, hurt people, the end. So the idea is for it to be taken a step further and say, actually, sometimes the greatest apology is changed behavior. You're actually different. You're doing things that you're sober now. You help other people recovering in addiction, which is also a super important step in the 12-step process. So, and as far as the second person who had submitted a question kind of along the same lines of shame and guilt and anger, all of that should be there, but only as a catalyst to move you into these places, move you into places of apologizing, move you into places of making amends and establishing behavior, and move you into places of actual behavior change. If you really don't like the way something feels and you get stuck in that feeling, the apology is not complete, or the realization is not complete. It's realized once you've moved into that next phase of yourself and you've used these feelings, which are really just red flags. They're letting you know, like, hey, I'm off the mark. You use them as building blocks to step into this new version of yourself with all of these realizations kind of in your suitcase,
This is great. It sounds to me like you just gave a little 4-step kind of path for someone to follow. And it sounds like that 4-step path really relates directly to Bailey's question, who's saying, what do you do if you've done this? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, self-reflection, apology, repair, behavior change. There's your formula, which sounds really clear, practical. Now the first question was a little different. It was saying, it was coming from the people. It sounds like they're already repaired. It sounds like they're saying, hey, you've done what you need to do. You've reflected on this. You've apologized to us. You've repaired the relationship. We feel good. You've changed your behavior. You're sober, and so on. We need you to accept that you've completed this process. We need you to now you can let go of the guilt at this point, right? And certainly the shame. Is there here's I guess 2 questions I have. One is, if at the point that those 4 things have been completed and the people that have been hurt are coming back and saying, no, we've let it go, we want you to let it go. If the person is still hanging on, what does that say? Like, is that a type of bad behavior in itself? Like, is it I don't really want to be judgmental about this, but I suppose what I'm asking is that another flaw like that? Now you should let go and let's all move forward together. What's making that person hold on to that when the hurt parties are like, it's done, we're done? That's one question. Maybe why don't we just start with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because each person has their own story. You don't know if in this person's background, there was like a heavy environment of guilt and shame growing up. And so just letting go of guilt and shame is not enough for someone else to say, no, I forgive you. Like, we're okay. We're really healed, and that kind of thing. If that was something that was inculcated from a young age, and that was an environment that they grew up with that was very impactful, it's not so simple. And they might need support to talk to a therapist, or join a 12-step group, which they often explore feelings of guilt and shame. Also, a lot of these kind of, it would be nice for it to be a clear 4-step process. Just, well, I did my apology, now here's my changed behavior, and we're good, right? And maybe for the daughters, it is that streamlined. Maybe for the daughters, and their own spiritual practice will inform how they deal with their own forgiveness. But often these things are cyclical, right? So I feel like I'm getting better and I'm feeling a little better about myself, and I see that things are different, but then I reflect again, or I reach this new place in my spiritual life where I'm really digging into my anarthas, or my unwanted, kind of stuff that I'm dealing with. And I'm realizing again, wow, I really do feel so bad. And as we become soft-hearted as Vaishnavas, hopefully we more and more are aware of how hurting people feels bad.
Right.
And so it's possible that in his own spiritual practice, it's not necessarily that he'll feel more ashamed, but he'll be more aware of how his behavior impacts others, and he'll remember the magnitude of the things that he's done before. So not as a way of kind of reliving or getting stuck, but as a way of like kind of just realizing again. And so if it's a cycle that's kind of moving upward, right, this is helping me, like I said, kind of propel me and move me along in my spiritual life, there's nothing wrong with going there again, especially if you're held, if you have support, if you have a therapist, or if you can do this as a family, then there's nothing really wrong with going there.
Right.
Yeah.
It sounds like time is probably important here too, right? Like we're just getting a message on the board from Scott saying it took me years to really do this. So maybe it just requires patience, but which relates to my next question was coming from Eva, and and on behalf of her and her sister, I suppose, is there anything they can do to kind of help their father understand you can let go now? Like, is there some ritual? Is it, or is it just, hey, just remind him every day, or that, hey, we've let go. Is there anything that they can do to kind of help him?
It seems like it's Dunny. It seems like things like lack of worth, lack of self-esteem, ashamed feeling of, I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy. It seems like that is so deeply woven into the DNA of some people, no matter how many hugs, no matter how many times you give them affirmations. It's something that has happened to them either in their childhood or a previous life or something, that there's no amount of validation that can get them out of it. How do they turn that corner?
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, that it happens, it can happen in childhood. And then also there's like a whole society that's conspiring kind of to make you feel unworthy, because unless you feel unworthy, why are you going to go shopping on Black Friday to load up on stuff?
Are you into conspiracy theories too? Because I think
Whoa,
there's a bunch of people
wait a minute.
conspiracing against me, trying to shame me.
I'm supposed to be here neutral middle. I'm not. No, but but it's true. Consumerism and that kind of stuff. The kind of desperate grasping for material stuff. It doesn't work if you have a high sense of self-worth, because of the things that are fulfilling you are coming from within. Then no external stuff is needed in that sense, and it can be welcome, but it's not needed, right? So it's like a little different energy. But you're both kind of asking, okay, so then what can be done? And this is kind of
my question had specifically to do with what can Eva do and her sister do. Yeah, because you explained some nice things about what he could do, but is there something that they could do?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no, in the sense that the relationship is a testament to the healing, right? If you're able to have what we call, and I think I've used this phrase before here, the corrective emotional experience. Before, when we would have dinner together, I would be afraid of your rage, or I would be afraid of your belligerence, or that you would get violent, or you would give me the silent treatment. It was very, whatever. The healing experience of having a normal, peaceful, nervous system neutral dinner is the medicine, right? So just having these experiences in a way that is peaceful and nourishing. If you can share bhakti, right? So then you're really getting to the root of each other's identity and really seeing each other for who you are. That's what really heals it. It's just really doing it right. So it doesn't necessarily mean we have to talk about it a whole lot. Sometimes it feels like when you want to accelerate healing, you need to be like pushing the button a lot. Like, good morning, I forgive you. Like, I don't know that that's that's necessary. I think that sometimes just having those corrective emotional experiences in and of themselves are very nourishing. And I'll add on to that. There's a book called Radical Forgiveness, which is it's a quite intense book. Jai Jagannath and I did like a workshop on it once. And the author makes a point to say that forgiveness is actually divine. It's not something that we can invoke. Oh, I want to forgive, so I'll just forgive. And if anyone's ever heard us, we know that it's not like a flip you can switch where you're just like, I just choose to forgive. And
or a switch you can flip.
A switch you can flip, I'm sorry. Either or. But yeah, so basically it's not something that you can necessarily turn on for yourself, whether it's forgiving other people or forgiving yourself. It's actually something you have to pray for. And then it's a willingness. That's what the author described. She says you have to be willing to forgive. You don't actually get to forgive. Forgiveness is something that's bestowed upon you by a higher power. but the willingness. I'm willing to forgive myself. I'm not there yet, but I'd like to. I'm going to pray on this. I'm going to do right. I'm going to act according to my values. Or in the case of the daughters, you know, I pray that you're willing to forgive. We are willing to forgive you, and I pray for that for you. And meanwhile, we'll enact forgiveness by operating in a mended relationship. And that in and of itself, slowly, through the nervous system, actually, slowly, it starts to reteach us like, okay, all is well. I can relax. Something is different. Things have changed.
Very
That
helpful.
was beautiful. Can I get a side squirrel thing on forgiveness for you, Dunya?
Sure.
While we've got you here. What if there's some acrimony in a relationship where you might have done something to hurt somebody, but you really blaringly see what they've done wrong, and you know you've got to apologize? It's like, how do you apologize, but you really want them to apologize too? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's like, and what do? How do you milk an apology out of them, but you want to apologize? You want to mend their relationship. Or do you just let it go and just have, you know, you guys deal? Because sometimes you apologize to a person there and they don't forgive you. They're like, yeah, we knew you'd apologize. You're a piece of crap anyway. You know what I mean? They don't have any, they won't take anything for what they've done, but they want you to apologize to them. And perhaps I'm just apologizing so that they will apologize to me. What do you think about that? How do you, should we look for an apology when we are apologizing?
Well, I think that's that first step, that self-reflection piece,
Right.
which is, why am I apologizing? What's happening here? Do I want to apologize so that I open a little channel where an apology can flow back to me?
Right.
Can I only apologize if I know I'm going to get one in return? Because it makes my bruised ego have another bruised ego, to have kind of a misery
Right.
loves company thing. I would say that, you know, when we apologize, especially as Bhakti practitioners, we're not necessarily only apologizing to that person. We're actually apologizing to our higher power for having hurt another one of our like brothers or sisters, right? So we're basically saying like, you know, Krishna, if I believe that you care about this other person as much as you care about me, and I really, really want you to care about me as much as I think you care about me, then I better be very careful how I treat other people.
Right.
So when I apologize to them, it's kind of it's a spiritual practice. It's basically saying, I'm doing this because it's what's right according to my values and according to my spiritual practice, and because I'm honoring the divinity in them despite whatever happened. And maybe the divinity in them is not like shining through in their behavior towards me, which is, you know, that happens, right? But oftentimes I find that a good, well-rounded apology, not like a I'm sorry you feel that way, because that's not a well-rounded apology, right? I'm sorry you're upset. A well-rounded, heartfelt apology is actually a miracle. It's miraculous to feel true remorse and to express it in a way that is like full of humility and full of compassion and full of kindness. That's the greatest step you could take toward mending the relationship in any dimension. It's the greatest chance you have at receiving whatever apology you want, but there's no guarantee that that'll happen. There's nothing you can do to kind of elicit that. You do it because it's the right thing to do for your own good, and also kind of, you know, as an offering to Krishna.
It almost sounds like what Raghunath is saying is, if I, like my perception is that we both played a role in this. And if I go in there and I just apologize, that person's likely going to say, okay, we did what we had to do now, but we're never going to get to the root of it. Is that sort of what you're thinking?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah. And I with, especially with adults, I found like, you know what? I have to do my part and apologize. I have to own 100% of whatever I've done. And what they do with whatever they've done, that's their business.
Right.
Like, I've cleared the slate. I forgive them for what they've done. Whatever they've done, but I have to own 100% of what I've done. And that's the only, because basically all this stuff is how we develop complicated minds, complicated hearts, their burdens we carry. We can say, yeah, just screw it. I'm just moving on with my life. No, don't screw it. We have to uncomplicate ourselves. And resentments, anger, my desire to want revenge, that stuff complicates reality. Bitterness in the heart. But I was actually thinking about in terms of parenting, because I liked, you know, I don't think I ever got an apology from my parents for anything. I think parents just back then, they just like that's the way it is, and just deal with it. It was like they ran the household like Mussolini ran Italy. It's just like, this is the rules. There's no going, you know what I mean? I don't know if your parents ever, Mara or Kostuba, did your parents ever apologize?
I'm not gonna get into it.
Never.
that wasn't old parenting habits back then, but I'm trying to set an example and apologize for things that I do. But I feel like saying, hey guys, this is where you come in and say, well, I had a part in this too, Dad. But they don't do that sometimes. Maybe I have to frame out how apologies work and how they, what do you think about teaching this to kids?
I mean, I have a toddler, so.
Right. Okay.
So I'm
Have you been
also-
apologizing?
I'm apologizing left and right, and also soliciting apologies left and right. Yeah, I think, there's nothing, if we think about our own parents, like what was more impactful, the stuff they said or how they did things, right? So if I had a parent who was like a master apologizer, whether I like it or not, that's going to be downloaded into my, hard drive there.
Right.
So I think it's just constantly presenting an example, not just of how you apologize to them, but how you apologize to others, like having them see us apologize to other adults, recognizing when we're not doing something right. And sometimes they need to be two different conversations, right? Like, I apologize to you for losing my cool. That wasn't, I apologize to them all the time. I
Right.
lost it. I'm sorry. Like I should speak to you more kindly. I'm going to work on that. And then having a little break and then saying, we're also going to talk about, and this is just about the role,
We're also
right?
gonna talk- yeah.
We're also going to talk about this thing you did that wasn't cool. And so separating the
Okay,
two
good.
teachable moments so that it doesn't feel transactional. Like, I'm sorry, now you're sorry too, right?
Oh, I like that. Right.
There you
So
go.
just giving it a little breathing room.
Kids are a little clever. Kids are a little clever nowadays. I once did this whole like elaborate apology, and I was like, I reacted harshly, but they definitely did something. And I was like, hey, I apologize for this. I shouldn't have raised my voice. I wasn't happy with what you did, but I acted way out of line. And you know what my response was? I won't say which kid it was, but it was apologies without changed behavior is a manipulation. I was like, what? Oh, wow.
Can I guess which kid? No, just kidding.
Well, that's
Yeah.
Oh, Krishna.
That's when you launch a, I'm sorry you feel that way.
No, that's when I tackled them and sent them to their room.
That's a
Okay.
tough one.
Anyway,
All right.
thank you. That was great.
Thank
You're
you, Don.
great, Dunya. Did anybody tell you that this morning?
You guys are great. No, you guys are the first.
We're the first? Okay, we're here to tell you you are great.
You're great.
Thank
You're
you.
good. There.
Okay, get ready to get great again because we got another question for you.
Yeah.
This one we needed you not only for your wisdom, but because it goes into elements of female biology where we just felt we're totally unqualified to answer this question.
Oh, I'm really unqualified.
Okay, this comes from Liz. And Liz writes, it's actually a very nice question and a very sincere question. And it gets into, I don't feel like there's nothing that you or I couldn't share on this right now, because it does get into those, it's a bit of a connection, it's to some of those feelings.
I'm on the edge of my seat. It's female biology. What's going on here?
Well, but like those feelings of unworthiness and in the one's practice and so on. So here we go. Thanks again for the wonderful podcast. Thank you, Liz. It's my daily nectar, and I don't know where I'd be without it. I have a question about periods and sadhana. You may have to check in with your female colleagues for this one. That's what we did.
Okay.
It's just that all my senior mentors are male, and it's somehow easier to write this to you than it is to ask them. Fair
Okay.
enough.
All right.
I'm endeavoring for initiation. Okay, so this is a person getting serious about bhakti, and they want to make a full commitment. And within the certainly within our branch of our lineage, when one's initiated into this lineage, there's a certain commitment that one has to make with their practice, with their daily practice. So she says, I'm endeavoring for initiation. Every month I go through a cycle where 4 out of 5 weeks, my sadhana, my spiritual practice, goes okay. I'm able to get up early and do my daily rounds, the chanting of japa for something like 2 hours or so, cook, for my deities, do my daily puja, serve my family, etc. It is sometimes a struggle depending on what life brings, but it's a handleable one. It's something that I can deal with.
Mhm.
Then comes week 5. Leading up to my period, I experience extreme fatigue. It's very hard to do much of anything. even my basic duty, let alone 16 rounds of japa on top of that. Then when my period comes, I have a lot of pain, leaving me bedridden for much of the day till it's over. And then, like coming out of some clouds, I'm back again. So that's the experience. And then she says, I feel like this is hindering me from initiation. Initiation requires this daily commitment. I'm looking into different remedies I can take to make my experience less extreme, from allopathic medicines to Ayurvedic herbs to resting more to hypnotherapy, and every month I feel hopeful that this time I won't be as affected. I've found the magical formula, etc. And every month, once again, I am affected like that. Do you have any tips? Ayurvedically, are we supposed to rest at that time? And I do as much as Ayurvedically, we are supposed to rest at that time. And I do as much as is practical with family life. But honestly, I find it really difficult mentally, emotionally, and physically to do any sadhana. I think to some extent, every woman must go through this. So someone out there must have some answers. I feel really frustrated and sad about this every month. Okay.
Okay, I'll go first. I lean towards hypnotherapy. Take you to a previous birth when you were a male and leave you there. Dunya?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. So we're done.
And that's the show.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate this question because, female biology is very different in the sense that there's a monthly cyclic experience. It's heavily influenced by hormones. It's also like impacted by the environment, and it can really change how we feel in our bodies and therefore how we kind of act in the world. So I think that, traditionally there were probably a lot of accommodations made for this type of experience, like making sure that women had rest or having women be amongst other women, because often
Extended
women
families living together.
Right. And so having help or having people who kind of understood each other's cycles and then kind of planning accordingly. Definitely these kinds of experiences are better in community, even when she was saying, like doing my duties of like taking care of my family and stuff, all of that is done better, within the village, so to speak, which is not, it's not so easy to just say, well, great, I'll just call up my village once a month and ask them to come. For some people that could be very challenging.
Sure.
I actually had this letter it's a well-known letter, but it's one that Srila Prabhupada, who's kind of like our grandfather guru, he wrote to one of his female disciples, because many people got sick being his students and traveling to India or being kind of very immersed in 24/7 service. They got sick, and sometimes it was his female students. And so there's one story of Yamuna Devi, one of his most, prominent female students. She was ill and she was just serving. And, one day she just kind of collapsed into a closet and was taking a nap in a closet. And when Prabhupada heard about that, he went and he sat with her in the closet. And he was just insisting, like, you need to take
Got
rest.
right there in the closet with her.
Yeah, he like knelt down. Imagine this like old 80-year-old man, kneeling down to one of his students, seeing her in this shape. He had so much
Right.
affection for his students. He knelt down next to her and was just saying, you need to rest, like, please. And he instructed his other students to help her by taking care of her. So this is one letter that he actually, no, it wasn't a letter. This is one of his female disciples saying, I was only able to cook for 3 days because I ended up having a health issue. Srila Prabhupada had a sign in the kitchen that said, health is number 1, chanting is number 2, service is number 3, and then comes reading, in that order. It was handwritten by Srila Prabhupada. He had that made up when Jadurani had come to visit, as she hadn't been taking care of her health. She was working really hard, and Srila Prabhupada made the point in what order of importance we were to take life seriously. We were so young and so foolish that we didn't know anything except what Srila Prabhupada taught us. So, when I read that letter, it just speaks to the compassion and also the fluidity of bhakti. That bhakti is, your sadhana is the anchor of your bhakti, but it actually informs all other decisions. And although this may not have been the rhetoric or the culture for a long time, taking care of your body is an important part of bhakti.
Dunya, can you say that order again?
Yeah. Health is number 1. Chanting is number 2. Service is number 3. And then comes reading.
Wow.
So that was a sign he had up in the kitchen, which means that was an instruction for everybody. It wasn't just, a letter he wrote to one specific person, or,
Wow.
it was up in the kitchen, which means he meant for others to have it visible. So I think that if, let's say we take that into account, okay, so then if health is number one, and this makes sense on a kind of psychophysiological basis too. If your body is telling you rest and you go, now you've made an enemy out of your body, because your body's asking you for something and it's essentially your ally. It's your helper in performing devotional service, but it's requesting rest and you're not giving it rest. And so that kind of contradiction that we have with our body, it's going to create further health complications down the line. And
Sure.
so the idea is for us to be really in tune. And oftentimes what happens for women during their cycle is that it's when they're most in tune with their body's needs, because their bodies are speaking more loudly, more clearly. So it's an excellent time actually to fine tune that skill of, all right, maybe the other 4 weeks out of the month, I'm like, yeah, I'm able to hustle and go and move at a pace that might actually be making me quite tired, but I don't hear it as loudly as that 5th week when I drop into my cycle and I get my period. And then all of a sudden it's like, I can't ignore these feelings anymore. I need to rest. I am in pain. My body is requiring me to heal and to nourish. And maybe I need herbs, or maybe whatever, hypnotherapy, whatever it is, to kind of get back. So my sense is the more you pay attention to that week and really drop into listening to your body as a way of recalibrating and as a way of getting back on board with your sadhana eventually, and as a way of being able to serve your family better with that intention in mind, really resting and really taking care of your health. And I'll say there are many forms of sadhana that are perhaps easier to do when you are in a state of, feeling pain or bodily kind of inability. Maybe that means really listening to more lectures, because you're able to just kind of pop in some headphones, and while you're doing your thing, cleaning the house, taking care of the kids, I'm in that grind too, so I can relate. Sometimes you just listen to a lecture and you're able to kind of soak in transcendental knowledge while you're sleeping or while you're driving the kids around or whatever it is. Reading when you can, if you need to kind of just lay down in bed and give your body physical rest, is that reading. And on a more kind of like esoteric internal level, that longing to chant, that desire to chant, man, I really wish I could be chanting my 16 rounds right now. I really wish, I aspire for initiation. This matters a lot to me. That in itself is an important feeling, because it means you're not just doing it mechanically because you're supposed to or because you have to. It's because perhaps there's an attachment they're developing. So kind of hanging on to that as a lifeline, like, wow, okay, now I remember what it feels like to not chant steadily, how much I want that to be a part of my life. And what I'll tack on just at the end is, this kind of highlights to me the importance of having a guru who can perhaps relate to how you're experiencing your body.
Right.
So having a female guru, whether it's your Diksha guru or your Shiksha guru, so your initiating guru or your instructing guru, who you might be able to offer these questions to, and maybe they have a more tailored, specific instruction for your situation at this time, based on their knowledge of your situation, their knowledge of your progress and your sadhana, and also their particular instruction. I think that is so necessary. I think that women everywhere would really appreciate having spiritual mentorship from somebody who's in a body similar to mine, so that I know how to take care of my body without perhaps feeling some of that awkwardness that I might feel, approaching a sannyasi with this question, or approaching an older
Sure.
male about this question. Maybe it doesn't just flow comfortably. Although I'll say, there are also many male teachers who are very okay with talking about this, and are also okay with, tailoring an instruction to make sure that it makes sense to their female students. So there's not necessarily a barrier there, but if as a student you feel more comfortable approaching a woman, then I would say yeah, it's super important to identify female teachers who could guide you along with that while you're, figuring this out.
Very helpful.
That was great. That was
Yeah.
great.
I was thinking, even the question is dealing with a tension that's, goes beyond this specific circumstance, which is, I suppose that, this kind of weight that one feels like, okay, I'm going to take a vow, I'm going to chant, and maybe I'm not able to carry it out. Now I feel unworthy. And now the whole burden of all of this is weighing too much on me. Maybe I just stop practicing altogether because I'm not able to handle it, or something like that. And that we kind of really have a clear idea, and especially as you're saying, like from our mentorship, from our gurus or from our teachers, that we all understand that the reason that we set this intention, that we take this vow, it's just setting an intention so that we'll continue to practice steadily. That's its purpose. That's the purpose that it's meant to serve. It's not just that it's like you take the vow and you carry out no matter what, and you, as long as you carry out the vow, everything's good. It's like you carry out the vow so that you will stay on track, and so the whole point is we want to stay on track as much as possible.
It gives you
And-
something to jump high towards.
Yeah.
That you're setting some bar, and when you set the bar high, sometimes you fall short as well.
And if that's going to cause you to be less engaged, then the vow's
Right.
not helping you. It's
Right.
like it's so let it work for you, and be a little forgiving with yourself if you can't do it all right now. Do the best that you can, and do that steadily. Maybe what's steady for you is to have 4 steady weeks in a month, and one week in a month where you need to kind of pull back.
And
But
that too is a regulation.
That's
That
a
too is a
regulation too.
regulation.
Yeah, that's right. The regulation should be, its purpose is to help us stay engaged well. And then the day is going to come where this isn't going to be an issue for you anymore, and you're going to say, whoa, I'm free. And if you've had that steady practice I really, I've mentioned this sometimes, but as I grow older, when I was young and new to this, and I was a monk and the whole thing, I was really more in the mindset of like, we could die now, tomorrow, like dive all in right now, And as I get older, I realize it's really, a lifelong strategy, and so at a certain point, this isn't going to be an issue anymore. So if you stay steady now, just stay real steady, then when that day comes, you're going to feel so free, and you're going to really be ready to, take advantage of, in a sense, that new body that you have, to have stronger sadhana. So you do the best you can. Let the regulations serve you. Let the regulations serve your commitment and your dedication and your steadiness, rather than hinder it. And guilt of not being able to reach this bar. Don't allow that to hinder you. It's supposed to work for you.
In all my years of practicing and teaching, I see this as one of the biggest problems. It's an everything or nothing mentality.
Right.
I'm going to follow this very, very high standard of these Brahmins that have been living like this for thousands of years, or I'm just going to do nothing. I'm just take it easy, be a friend of Krishna in the distance. No, it's normal and healthy to have that tension.
Right.
But we can't hate ourselves if we can't make the bar all the time. There's got to be a tension where we're working towards something instead of just relinquishing to, I give up. Rolling over and playing dead in our spiritual life isn't going to work either. Danya, you're so lucid and clear. And I think this is another great point you made. Lean into someone who can relate to your body and your situation. If you have a guru that's a sannyasi, but you're married with children, find other people that can serve as gurus, that can talk about children and raising a family and relating to your spouse. A sannyasi might have never had a girlfriend their entire life, or vice versa. You need someone who you can relate to. Doesn't mean you can't have a sannyasi in your life as a guru, but gurus come in many forms. So we need people in our lives that we can relate to, that speak our language, so to speak. And of course, if you're a lady, we need ladies in our life, lady teachers in our life as well.
And one last thing I was thinking too is just like Tanya was speaking about, like a more traditional model, like even that whole idea of families living together, like it makes so much sense, and we've totally shattered it so much. And here's an example of where like a woman should be given some time, given some space, but that's not the world that we live in, where a woman might have kids and a job and doing her sadhana, may not even have a spouse. Who knows? It's so much pressure. If you're going to handle that pressure and do your sadhana the best you can, otherwise your health will break down. And I think that was a great thing that you brought up, that number one point is health. Prabhupada's saying health first. It's not that he was like kind of like just being sentimental, or no, it was like, it's just, he's being practical. If your health goes, your whole spiritual life is likely going to suffer due to it too. So let's take care of that first.
What a pleasure. Dunya on the
Thank you,
show.
Dunya.
This was
Thank you,
great.
guys. Thanks for having me. It's so nice to be with you.
Kastuba, ever get hypnotized?
No.
You should do it. It works.
should
It's
do it.
totally real.
No, but I blew the whistle on you. I don't know if we talked about this on the show before, but I blew the whistle. Do you remember that? I think we may have talked about it on the old Super Soul Sacred Sangha, but
Here's the
I
deal.
ratted
Here's the
you
deal.
out. Remember
here's
that?
the deal. Hypnotism works. I've been there,
Here's the deal.
done it. Steadies the vrittis of the mind. You can trace yourself back to lifetimes.
It's all bogus, Raghunath. You
It's not
buying into
bogus.
this.
It's not bogus. We should have a hypnotist on the show, giving their real life experiences and their, what comes out of the clients. Very interesting stuff. Mara, have you ever been hypnotized?
No.
What kind of
You
boring
think-
lives do you guys live?
We're
Dunya, have
happy.
you been
It's
hypnotized?
because our lives aren't boring that we don't feel a need to be hypnotized.
Dunya, have you been hypnotized?
No, I'm kind of scared of that kind of stuff.
Because they could
It's
leave you
dark. It's creepy.
I don't know
Raghunath.
what's
It's
back
not-
there, and I feel like if I don't remember, it's maybe because I'm not meant to.
Well, you know what they can do? They can take you back to trauma, and then you can get caught up in that trauma.
Oh, you
I
come
can't
like-
even deal with my issues in this
Womb-
body, in this
womb
lifetime. I don't
therapy.
need to go back.
It's all
to-
connected, Mara. It's all
I don't need to
connected.
go
Your
back
traumas
previous
in this
lifetimes.
lifetime are connected to your previous choices in your previous life.
Can't we just move forward, Raghunath?
I think I should become a hypnotherapist. That could be part of my Raghunath. Hypnotherapist, punk
I
rock
think
singer,
that's a great idea.
teacher,
Botanist.
bhakti, yoga teacher,
Yeah, just do it
botanist.
privately. Just do it
naturopath.
entirely
pri-
privately.
I want to. I'll have a private practice. I'll accept you, Kastuba, and you can give me on my website. You can give me accolades like Raghunath, this magical experience and hypnotism. I gave up smoking.
I'll be faking the whole thing. I'll be like,
What do you think I'm going to have? You be a chicken or something? I'm not going to. I'm going to do real therapy hypnotherapist. You know what? I should learn something like that. I know nothing, Kastuba. I know nothing.
Raghunath,
I have
why don't-
no actual.
You know about Bhakti. You know about the most valuable thing, and you share it with people very effectively. Be satisfied with that.
I
Raghunath.
have no actual talent in this world. I have to. I don't know.
I only have the
Maybe.
most confidential knowledge.
I don't know. I think I should maybe go to hypnotherapy school. And next, I can rebrand myself, Raghunath hypnotherapist.
Oh.
Available for birthday parties.
All right.
Thanks
Raghunath.
everybody joining us on Facebook today. Hey, Facebook people, join us live on Zoom every day or binge listen to this podcast. What the hell music is that? Wherever you get
What the
wherever you
hell
get
music is that?
podcasts.
It's the divine Genevieve Harrison.
Oh, okay. Sorry, John. We love you, John B. So anyway, thanks for joining us. Listen to us wherever you get podcasts or write Mara, Wisdom of the Sages 108 at gmail.com. I hope you had a good Black Friday, everybody. Get ready for Cyber Monday. Fulfill that God-shaped hole in your heart by purchasing stuff.
What about
that will end up
Hypnotherapy
in
Tuesday?
That will end Hypnotherapy Tuesday.